again, this is Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College with the last of the retapes from the Joomla 3 Beginner's Guide by Eric Tiggeler book. Again, the book has 12 chapters. I have retaped the lectures for chapters 1 through 8. I skipped chapter 9 on permissions and have done 10 and 11. This is 12 right now that we're going to be going through. And as you can see, it's on attracting search engine traffic and search engine optimization tips and techniques. I seem to have lost my clip I used to hold my book. There we go. So we'll get started right now. So again, what I've decided to do is take Thursday, which is the 6th of November, I believe. Double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So next Thursday, the 6th of November, that's when I'm going to be looking at everyone in the class. That's when I'm going to be looking at your final completed projects for the Corba site. All right, and we'll talk about that in class today and about what we're going to be doing in the other classes. Maybe I need to become a little bit more regimented with people, because when I give a lot of lab time, it seems like we have a lot of people who just aren't showing. So, all right, in this chapter then, we're going to talk about optimizing articles, adding metadata to content, using search-friendly URLs, creating internal hyperlinks, and redirecting visitors to update URLs. There are a couple exercises in this chapter, but the crux of the chapter, the majority of the chapter, whatever you want to say, by and large, it is on kind of like what I call tips and techniques, basically, to try to make your site a little bit better. They mention that SEO is a subject surrounded by many secrets and myths because, as mentioned on the bottom of the page there, there's no magical bullet that you can do that will bring you overnight success. In other words, there's nothing special you can necessarily do to a site that's going to make sure that your site appears on page 1 in Google's searches, for example. You know, most of the stuff that's in this chapter is very common sense. The first and foremost, make sure you offer great content. Well, one way to get yourself up on the search engine list is to have a lot of people come to your site. One way to have a lot of people come to your site is by having a site that's worth coming to. Okay? So as it says, search engines are probably the main tool that some people will use to get to your site. Okay? To add your site to their database, search engines often use software to scan the web looking for relative content. Again, how that's done exactly, no one really knows, because by and large, Google has kept the way that they do things secret. There are all sorts of articles and stuff you can read, but no one really knows exactly for sure what their algorithm is, or even if there is an algorithm for where you end up on the search engine list. So as it says, all techniques boil down to increasing the visibility of content to the search engines. How can you make that possible? For search engine robots to interpret your web page source and find it easy to index your content. So again, this chapter goes through some techniques, but they say they'll start with what the site's all about, and that is the articles. So the first thing they do is they'll give you some tips for optimizing article findability, and these again are good practices. Article title, make it meaningful. As mentioned there, the first thing is the article title, the very first piece of data you enter in the article editor. In Joomla, you enter the title into the title field, and it's displayed in 2 key positions, in the title itself and also in the browse bar. So as it says there, you know, you want to make sure that it's something. You want to make sure that it's actually 2 things. First, as mentioned there, it's a strong, meaningful, descriptive title, but second, you also don't want it to be too long, so long that it scrolls off the screen and people can't read it, and you know, you don't want to put in a lot of words that really are unnecessary. It says, although it's good to be specific, you should aim to keep things short. Okay? Second, the article structure. Use clear formatting. Don't use headings that are just plain text styled in bold type. The main page should be formatted with an H1 heading. The secondary level should be heading 2, etc. It says there in Joomla's article editor, you apply H1 through H6 headings using the article editor format drop-down box. We've gone over this before. All right, if you don't remember, if I go into Content, Article Manager, and I just bring up, I'm just going to grab this one, Visit the Bad Art Event. And if we wanted an H1 heading right here, please don't miss this event. All right, you've seen this before, okay, that we come in. Now again, this is the different editor, so I'll have to maybe look for it, but I think it was under styles. At least in the old editor that we were using, I thought it was under styles at least. But there was a thing in there that showed the different types of sizes that we could use. Now I'm not getting anything from here, and I don't know why. But that was where it was with the old editor. Okay. They mentioned in June, you know, again, we talked about this already. I don't think it really is worth talking about much more. Again, they give you some tips and techniques on the next page. Joomla uses H1 for page headings. They're displayed only if you select this option of the menu link, page display options, show headings, yes, right there. All right. Using this option, you can customize the H1 heading for any article that's directly related through a menu item. All right. And you saw how this stuff basically was in blue when we did it, when we added the stuff before. That's what I was looking for. So it looks like styles paragraph, but I didn't see the paragraph here. So there's styles. I can just search through this thing forever, and maybe I'll find it, maybe I won't. All right, or I could go back and bring back the old editor. I'm just not going to do that, though. Remember, the other way we can do that, too. You know, as shown right here, we can toggle the editor. All right, please don't miss this event. Instead of putting a paragraph tag in there like that, we probably could have just put in an H1 right here. I don't know any reason why we couldn't. All right, and then toggle back, and you see it. Okay? All right. That may not be the same way as they mention it right here, and you probably have a little bit less ability to go in and edit that way. I don't know. All right, optimizing H1 headings. Here's the approach the author says that you should use for all of your H headings. H1, maiden page heading, and you really should have one of these on each page when possible. All right, H2, article heading, all right, and H3 through H6, subheadings as necessary. The author mentions here the default setup means that you can wind up with pages without an H1 heading if you don't add page headings. In those cases, it'd be better to add an H1 element for the article heading, as it is the only one on the page. Unfortunately, Joomla doesn't allow you to display the article title using H1 tags instead of H2 tags. It says if you want more control over this, there is an extension that you can add, a free plugin that's called header tags. I'm not going to go out there, and I have not added it. But as it says, it'll basically look through your stuff for you, and it says this changes existing heading tags according to your specifications. After installation, it checks if there is an H1 tag in the output, and if there's not, the first H2 tag is automatically changed to an H1 tag. All right. Third, the article body text. Use relevant keywords. It's a good idea to use relevant keywords. When writing, ask yourself, what words would visitors be searching for the content that you offer. All right. You know, part of being a good web designer is not only being able to create a good web page, but it's either having the ability to write yourself or to have somebody on staff that knows how to write and make the content relevant, hip, whatever you want to call it, where people want to look at it. It says if you're stuck for keyword inspiration, as always, you can. There's online stuff. The Google AdWords keyword tool is an excellent example. Make sure you use keywords and synonyms throughout the article. Okay, but don't just stuff it with keywords. Make it readable. You try to look at your site from the perspective of your end user. Update articles regularly. You know, people don't like stale content. All right. You don't want to. If there was an art meeting in September, that shouldn't still be out on your site, for example, and it should by no means should it be a featured article. Those are the kind of things that you'd want to archive. Okay? All right, images. Explain what they're about. To search engine spiders, an image is a meaningless data file. This means you can help the search engine, all right, with the alt tag. Okay, we've talked about this before. It says, of course, creating great content isn't a Joomla specific art. If you want to read more about SEO writing, this, there is a starter guide, and I've looked through it, and I've given it to a couple of you who are working on internships, and there's some good stuff in there. But again, much of the stuff that's in here is just common sense. All right, configuring HTML page titles. It's considered good SEO practice to not only add a specific page heading, but also make sure each page has a descriptive HTML page title, the most important ranking factors for search engines. The contents of the title element aren't displayed in the web page itself, but are shown in the browser title bar, as shown here. So let's take a look. There aren't too many exercises in this chapter, thankfully. But let's go through some of them. So again, I'm just going to save and close here and go back. They want us to navigate over to Menus, Menu Manager, and select the menu containing the link you want to edit. In here they say, let's check the About Joomla. Well, we don't have the About Joomla, so let's check the About Corba. All right. Click on the link to edit it in the page display options. Let's do the Who Are Corba. All right. In the page display options right here, it says enter the desired browser page title text. Find out about Corba officers. I don't know, I just made that up. It says you can enter something like browser page title. Well, this is a little bit more relevant. Click on Save and Close. Go and view your site. All right, and where are we in here where we have Who Are Corba, and find out about Corba officers right there. So, as mentioned here, up on page 360, you've just seen how to control the browser page title by editing the menu item details. All right. However, you can't change the page title for an article that isn't directly linked through a menu link. All right. Adding a site name to the page title. Another way to configure this, they mention, is to append the site name to it. This is the name that you use when installing the site. And it says you can also enter and change the site through Site Global Configuration Site Settings. I've already done that. The benefit of having the option added to the site title is that all pages will display both the information about the site and about the current page that it contains. To try this out, they tell us to again navigate over to System, Global Configuration, and in the SEO settings that are here, right there, it says the option includes site name and page titles is probably set to no. Include site name and page titles. All right. This indicates that the page title will be taken from the current article. If you choose before or after in the include, the site name will be added. For example, if you had entered your site name, the page title would look as follows. So let's do it before. I think it already was before, so let's move it to after. All right. So we'll save and close. We'll run it. Home Corba. News Corba. Activities Corba, etc. All right. All right. Next, as we move onward and upward to page 361, adding meaningful metadata. Remember that metadata is used by the search engine itself as it's spidering through your website. There's a lot of disagreement today over how much that's used and whether it's even used, but I think it still is a good practice to use it. So in Joomla, they mention here you can add metadata on 4 levels. Site-wide, for individual menu links, for individual categories, or for individual articles. So we've got another exercise here on page 361. So it says you'll find controls for optimizing your site search engine traffic in the back end of the configuration panel. First, let's add some global keywords that characterize the site's content. So jumping back in here again, we want to navigate again to System, Global Configuration. On the Site tab, there should be a section called Metadata Settings. There it is. I've put a lot of this stuff in already. So they want Corba is an international club of collectors of really bad art, ugly art, bad paintings, Corba. Alright, so I've done all that stuff. Alright, so I could have removed it, but I'd done it in an earlier exercise, save and close. So what they did there was they added some keywords and descriptive text to the site. It won't be included in every page, but search engines don't give much weight to meta tags anymore, although even with that, some books will disagree with that. Alright, the site description is still very important and will show up when your site appears on a search results page. It's a good idea to keep the meta description as concise as possible. Google only uses the first 155 characters. Choosing what metadata to set, as we mentioned, global metadata are used if you haven't set any other metadata information. You can override global data. Metadata for a category, override global or menu item metadata, and finally you can set it for individual articles, which override everything, kind of the way CSS works. Alright, so next, have a go here, find metadata to fit your site. It says all that bad art business is okay for the sample site, but what about particular metadata for your site? What do you do best? And as they say, you should do some research, come up with a list of keywords. To explore data, point your browser at a site you'd like to explore and select the option underneath the hood. In other words, do like a view page source and take a look at what's in there. Alright, next. Using search engine friendly URLs. It says up till now, we focused on SEO techniques that you can apply when writing and formatting. Another technique you can use will help make your URLs more clear and readable. It says you don't have to do anything to make this happen. By default, search engine friendly URLs are turned on. In the SEO settings, the search engine friendly URLs are set to yes. So again, if we check this and we go to System, Global Configuration, and we go to the Site tab, we should notice under the SEO settings, search engine friendly URLs are set to yes already. It says there's still room for improvement. All default Joomla URLs share the index.php. You can get rid of this part by using the URL rewriting option found in the SEO's settings section. It requires a bit more work, and what they're talking about here is trying to pretty print URLs, for lack of better words. Alright, it says if your web host runs IIS software, which we're not using, you can do that by setting add suffix to URL. The HTML suffix is added to the URL. As it says, this is recommended because then Joomla pages look pretty much like any other page. Alright, adding extra links to site content. Alright, it says, of course, it's great to have other quality sites contain links to your site. One way to do that is to notify Google, Bing, and others. Another way that you can do that is to provide internal links within your site. By adding these, you make it easier for users and visitors and search engines to find your content. You might also want to have reciprocal type of agreements with other companies where you agree to use their, put links to their site and they agree to have links to your site. Alright, so on 366 here, they have creating an automatically generated set of hyperlinks. So let's jump back into here. So they want us to navigate over to Extensions, Module Manager, and click on New. Select the most read content module. It says enter the details for this module. In the title field, enter popular articles. In the position field, select position 3, footer 3. select footer 3 to show this module in the bottom right position. Alright, so it should say footer 3, footer 3, but I didn't see it here. How about just putting it in footer last position? That's fine. It says leave all the other settings the way they are. By default, the menu assignment settings will make the module display on all pages. The basic options are now set to show. So we should be able to click on Save and Close, view the site, and let's go down to our footer. I see absolutely nothing. I'm going to try to put it in the left bottom just to see if it changes anything. Show. That should be correct. I wonder if that's it here. Let's go look and change pages and see if that'll. Alright, didn't help much. Alright. The last thing that's discussed in the book here, sorry about that, the last thing that's discussed in the book right here. Right, again, I know I did this in class and it worked, but I'm not sure exactly what happened here. Adding linked lists. Alright. Redirecting visitors to pages that have moved. Joomla features a component called the Redirect Manager. Alright. And it's meant to alleviate those 404 page not found errors. So this is the last exercise that's in the book. They want us to come in here and go to Components, Redirect, to open the Redirect Manager link screen. It says in the course of time the expired URL column will automatically be populated with broken links. So it says click on New to open up the redirect. You have to enable the plugin manager. Okay. This would have been alphabetized, but I don't see redirect in there. Okie doke. So let's just wrap this up.